The smell of pine smoke and frozen earth clung to everything in the northern fjords. My threadbare cloak, my work-roughened hands, even the corner of the herb-drying room where I'd been sitting for the past hour, pretending not to hear them. I pressed my palm against the frosted window, watching the village square fill with torchlight, listening to the distant war horns that made my ribs ache with something I had no right to name. I didn't belong out there. I never had. The stronghold was preparing for his return, and I could already hear them gathering. Laughter echoing off stone walls, the crack of ale barrels splitting open, the sharp commands of warriors organizing the welcoming ceremony. Every time the Alpha King returned from campaign, they celebrated his strength, his victories, his unbroken bloodline. And every time, I made myself smaller in my healer's hut, hoping no one would remember I existed. But they always did. Moon touched, the broken Omega who thinks she still matters. I wrapped my arms around myself, feeling the familiar cold settle deep in my chest. My mother had been a healer too, gentle-voiced, patient, with hair like winter wheat. I'd inherited that from her, along with her softness. My father had been a warrior, though I barely remembered his face. He'd fallen in a border raid when I was 7, leaving me to navigate a world that saw me as damaged goods, a stain on their perfect hierarchy. The worst part? My bond had snapped 3 years ago, 20 winters old, and I'd felt the connection shatter like ice underfoot when my intended mate, Bjorn, a beta warrior, chose a higher-ranked female at the spring gathering. No warning, no apology, just a public rejection that left me gasping on my knees in front of the entire pack while they pretended not to notice. Rejected Omegas didn't get second chances. We didn't get choices. We existed at the edges, tending wounds and brewing teas. Too broken to bond again, too useful to exile completely. I was trapped in this half-life. Too weak to challenge, too invisible to protect. Too rejected to ever truly belong. A knock at the door made me flinch. Lagertha. Astrid's voice was soft through the wood, careful. You need to come to the square. They're calling all healers. My stomach dropped. He's wounded? Poisoned blade, Astrid said, and I heard the fear threading through her words. Floki's asking for anyone who knows their herbs. The Alpha King. She hesitated. They say he might not survive the night. I closed my eyes, fighting the wave of panic that threatened to drown me. Ragnar Lodbrok was a legend, even among the northern packs. Ruthless, strategic, descended from the original bloodline. They said he'd never taken a mate, that he'd killed rival alphas with his bare hands, that his eyes could see straight through any lie. And tonight, I might have to stand before him while he bled out, trying not to collapse from terror. I'll be there in 5 minutes, I managed to say. Astrid hesitated. Bring your best supplies, and Lagertha... Her voice dropped. Stay quiet. Don't draw attention. Floki only wants competence, not complications. The unspoken message was clear. Don't embarrass us. Don't remind them what you are. I waited until her footsteps faded before moving to the wooden chest where I kept my medicines. My fingers trembled as I gathered yarrow for blood loss, feverfew for poison, willow bark for pain. Everything I'd need to treat a dying king while pretending I wasn't terrified of being noticed. As I fastened my cloak, my gaze caught on the small bronze mirror above my washing basin, and I forced myself to look. Pale, wheat blonde hair that never quite braided smoothly. Gray eyes that seemed too large for my face. Always watching. Always wary. Skin that bore no mate mark. No scars from battles I'd never been allowed to fight. I looked exactly like what I was. A rejected Omega playing healer in a world of predators. But there was something else. Something I'd been touching obsessively for the past 2 weeks, ever since the Council's last brutal decree. My hand moved instinctively to my throat, and fingers finding the small silver moonmark pendant my mother had left me. I pressed it against my pulse point, the way I always did when afraid, feeling the cold metal ground me. You are not what they call you, my mother used to whisper. The moon marks her own. I'd never understood what she meant. Outside, the war horn sounded again. 3 sharp blasts, that meant the Alpha King had entered the stronghold gates. I pulled my hood up, grabbed my medicine satchel, and stepped into the frozen night. The square was chaos. Warriors shouting, torches blazing, the metallic scent of blood cutting through the smoke. I kept my head down, weaving through the crowd toward the stronghold entrance, trying to be invisible, trying to be useful, trying to be anything except what I was. Moon-touched, rejected, worthless. Then I heard Floki's voice, raw and desperate, cutting through the noise. "Where's the quiet one? The Omega healer? Someone get her now." Every head turned, and for the first time in 3 years, I stopped trying to disappear. They dragged me through the stronghold like I was the cure itself. 2 guards flanked me, their hands not quite touching but close enough to feel like a cage. The stone corridors blurred past, tapestries of old victories, mounted weapons, the bones of conquered territories. Everything here was meant to intimidate, to remind you that power lived in these walls, and you were only visiting. The Alpha's chambers were on the highest floor. Of course they were. By the time we reached the heavy oak doors, my lungs burned and my medicine satchel felt like it weighed more than I did. 1 guard knocked twice, sharp and efficient. The healer, Floki. Before we continue, please hit the subscribe and like button and tell me which city you're tuning in from. I love to know where this story found you. Now let's dive in. The door swung open, and the smell of blood hit me like a fist. The room was massive, furs and weapons and a bed large enough to fit 5 warriors. But all I could see was the man sprawled across it, half-conscious, his skin too pale beneath the gore. Ragnar Lodbrok. He looked nothing like the legend. His dark hair was matted with sweat and dirt, braids half undone. A jagged wound crossed his ribs, still seeping despite the bandages someone had tried to apply. His breathing was shallow, uneven, the kind that said poison working its way deeper. Floki stood beside the bed, his face drawn tight. "Can you save him?" I didn't answer immediately. Couldn't. I was too busy trying not to faint. "Healer," Floki snapped, "I asked you a question." My voice came out hoarse. "Let me see the wound." He stepped back, giving me space I didn't want. The other warriors watched from the shadows, their eyes pressing against my skin. I could feel their doubt, their contempt, their certainty that the rejected Omega would fail. I set my satchel on the edge of the bed and forced my hands to steady. The wound was worse up close. Deep, angry, the edges blackened. Whoever had struck him knew their poisons. This wasn't meant to kill quickly. It was meant to make him suffer first. "I need hot water," I said quietly. "Clean cloth. And everyone except Floki needs to leave." Silence. Then one of the warriors laughed, sharp and cruel. "You think you give orders here?" "I think," I said, not looking up, "that if you want him to live, you'll get out of my way." More silence. Then Floki's voice, cold as the fjord in winter. "Out. All of you." They left like wolves slinking from a rival's kill. When the door closed, I finally allowed myself to breathe. "You have spine," Floki murmured. "Didn't expect that." "You asked for competence," I said, unpacking my supplies. "Not cowardice." He almost smiled. Almost. The water arrived. I cleaned the wound in silence at first, my movements careful, methodical. Yarrow to slow the bleeding. Feverfew paste to draw out the poison. When I pressed the cloth against the blackened edges, Ragnar flinched, a low sound escaping his throat. "I'm sorry," I whispered without thinking. His eyes cracked open. They were storm gray, unfocused but aware, looking at me like he was trying to understand what I was. "No one." His voice was barely there. "No one ever apologizes." My hands stilled. Pain deserves respect. Something shifted in his expression. Confusion, maybe, or recognition. "Who are you?" he rasped. "Lagertha, the healer." "No." He winced as I applied more pressure. "Who are you?" I didn't know how to answer that. The rejected Omega? The moon-touched outcast? The girl who spent 3 years trying to be invisible? Someone trying to keep you alive, I finally said. His eyes held mine for a breath longer. Then he closed them, his breathing evening out slightly as the feverfew began to work. Floki watched me from the corner. He'll need you again tomorrow, and the day after. It wasn't a question. I'll come, I said. You're afraid of him. I'd be stupid not to be. Floki's mouth twitched. Maybe. But you didn't run. I finished bandaging the wound, my fingers brushing against the ridged scars that covered Ragnar's torso. Old battles, old pain, the kind that never fully healed. Will he survive? Floki asked quietly. If the poison doesn't spread. I packed my supplies, not meeting his eyes. And if he actually rests instead of pretending he's invincible? He won't. Then I'll scold him. This time Floki did smile. You really do have spine. He walked me to the door, but before I could leave, Ragnar's voice cut through the room. Come back tomorrow, Lagertha. It wasn't a command. It wasn't a request. It was something else entirely. I glanced back at the bed, at the Alpha King who looked more human than legend in the firelight. I will, I said. And I meant it. I returned the next morning with fresh bandages and a tea blend that would make him hate me. The guards knew me now. They stepped aside without question, though their eyes still tracked me like I might steal something valuable. I suppose, in a way, I had the Alpha King's attention, however briefly, and that was worth more than gold in the northern fjords. Ragnar was awake when I entered. Sitting up, actually, which was exactly what he shouldn't be doing. Lie down, I said, setting my basket on the table. He ignored me, studying a map spread across his lap. The southern border needs reinforcement before... Lie down! His eyes lifted to mine, surprised. For a moment I thought he'd argue. Then, incredibly, he obeyed. Bossy for someone half my size, he muttered. Alive because of someone half your size, I countered, and unwrapping his bandages. The wound looked better. The blackness had receded, the edges starting to knit. I cleaned it with yarrow water, my touch as gentle as I could manage, but he still tensed. Sorry, I whispered. You apologize too much. You complain too much. His laugh was unexpected, rough and short, like he'd forgotten how. Floki said you'd scold me. Floki was right. I could feel him watching me as I worked. Not the way men usually looked at omegas, calculating their usefulness or availability. This was different, curious, like I was a puzzle he hadn't encountered before. You hum when you concentrate, he said. My hands stilled. I hadn't realized. I didn't mean to... Don't stop. His voice softened. It's the first pleasant sound I've heard in months. Something warm and dangerous flickered in my chest. I forced it down, returning to my work, letting the melody slip out again without thinking. An old lullaby my mother used to sing. Your mother taught you healing? He asked after a while. Everything I know. She was Pack? She was kind. I tied off the fresh bandage, in a world that didn't reward it. Ragnar was quiet for a long moment. I know something about that. I glanced up, startled. The Alpha King admitting vulnerability? Drink this. I handed him the tea, avoiding his eyes. He sniffed it and grimaced. What's in this? Poison? Willow bark, ginger root, and a lecture about resting. I crossed my arms. Drink. He drank, making a face like a child forced to swallow medicine. Despite everything, I almost smiled. You're enjoying this, he accused. Of immensely. Cruel woman. Stubborn alpha. The silence that followed felt different than before. Comfortable, almost. Like we'd been doing this for years instead of days. Why are you here? He asked suddenly. In the village. You're skilled enough to be at court. My fingers found the moon mark at my throat. I'm not wanted at court. Why not? Because I'm rejected. Because I'm broken. Because I'm everything your society despises. It's complicated, I said instead. He watched me with those storm-gray eyes, seeing too much. You're afraid. Of course I'm afraid. You're the Alpha King. Not of me. He shifted, wincing slightly. Of them. The pack. I looked away, focusing on repacking my supplies. They have their reasons. What did they do to you? The question was so direct, so unexpectedly gentle, and that something in me cracked. They didn't do anything, I said quietly. I just wasn't enough. And when you're not enough in the northern fjords, you learn to be invisible. You're not invisible. I risked a glance at him. What? To me, Ragnar said, you're not invisible. The words hung between us like first snow, fragile, unexpected, transforming everything they touched. I didn't know what to say. Didn't know how to explain that no one had seen me in 3 years. That I'd become so good at disappearing that sometimes I forgot I existed at all. I should go, I managed. You need rest. When will you return? Tomorrow, if you need me. I need you. The way he said it made my breath catch. Not I need a healer, just I need you. Tomorrow then, I whispered. As I reached the door, his voice stopped me one last time. Lagertha? I turned. Thank you, he said. Not just for the healing. For treating me like a man. You are a man, I said simply. The crown doesn't change that. I left before he could respond, my heart beating too fast, my fingers still warm from where they'd brushed his skin. Behind me, I didn't see the way Ragnar Lodbrok watched the door long after I'd gone, or the way he touched his bandage where my hands had been, or the way he finally, for the first time in years, smiled. 5 days of careful tending. 5 days of stolen conversations and almost smiles. 5 days of me forgetting, just a little, what I was. Then the council reminded me. I was gathering cloudberries near the forest edge when I heard the screams. The village square had been transformed into a judgment hall. Council members sat on raised platforms, all but their faces carved from stone and winter. And there, on her knees in the center, was Yrsa, a young Omega I'd treated once for fever. The accused has been found bonded to a male outside her assigned pairing, Elder Halvard announced. This is a violation of pack law. My basket slipped from my hands. Yrsa was sobbing, her wrists bound, her intended mate, the one the council had chosen for her, standing to the side with his arms crossed, satisfied, vindicated. She chose wrong, another elder said. Omegas do not choose, they are chosen. Please, Yrsa begged. I love him. The back of Halvard's hand split her lip. Love is not a right, he said coldly. It is a privilege, one you have forfeited. I wanted to run to her. Wanted to scream that this was wrong, that she deserved choice, that we all did. But my feet were rooted. My voice trapped behind 3 years of learning to be silent. They dragged her to the exile post. 30 lashes, public humiliation, then banishment to the waste territories where rejected and disobedient Omegas went to disappear. I stood there, useless and silent, while they destroyed her. When it was over, I ran. Not to my hut, not to the healing rooms, to the stronghold, to him. The guards tried to stop me. The Alpha King isn't receiving, get out of my way. Something in my voice made them step aside. I found Ragnar in his chambers, standing at the window, his hands braced against the frame. Even from behind, I could see the tension radiating through him. Shoulders locked, breathing harsh, the air around him vibrating with barely contained rage. You should leave, he said without turning. No, Lagertha. They punished her for choosing. My voice broke. For daring to love someone they didn't approve, and you did nothing. He spun, and I saw it then, the fury in his eyes, the helplessness, the way his fists were clenched so tight his knuckles had gone white. I wasn't there, he growled. The council acted while I was meeting with the border scouts. By the time I returned, She was already bleeding. Yes. The word was torn from him. And there was nothing I could do without triggering a civil war. So you let them. I let nothing. He crossed the space between us in 2 strides. Do you know what it costs me? Watching them twist every law I try to change? Fighting battles on 17 fronts while the council undermines me at every turn? Then why fight at all? I demanded, tears burning my eyes. If you're powerless anyway. Because I'm trying to change this world. His shout echoed off stone. But Rome wasn't built in a day, and neither is revolution. We stood there, both shaking, both furious at a system that devoured the powerless and called it order. I don't belong here, I whispered finally. His expression cracked. Neither do I. The confession hung between us like a bridge. Ragnar moved first, a step closer, his hand lifting as if to touch my face, then dropping. You think I chose this crown, this endless wait? You're the Alpha King. I'm a man, he said roughly. A man who bleeds and breaks and doesn't know how to fix what's wrong without destroying everything. I saw it then. The exhaustion behind his strength. The loneliness behind his power. The way he'd been fighting alone for so long he'd forgotten what it felt like to have someone stand beside him. You're not alone, I heard myself say. Lagertha. You're not. Something in him shattered. He pulled me against his chest. Not gently, but desperately. Like I was the only solid thing in a world turning to smoke. I felt his heart hammering against mine, his breath ragged in my hair, his arms trembling as they wrapped around me. Stay, he whispered. Just for tonight, stay. I should have left. Should have remembered my place, my brokenness, all the reasons this was impossible. Instead, I tilted my face up. I'm here, I said. And when his mouth found mine, it wasn't the Alpha King kissing a rejected Omega. It was 2 people seeking shelter in each other's wreckage. 4 weeks later, I collapsed in the forest. One moment I was gathering wintergreen, the next my vision tilted and the ground rushed up to meet me. The basket scattered, herbs spilling across frozen earth like tiny green prayers I couldn't voice. When I opened my eyes, Astrid was kneeling beside me, her hand on my forehead. How long have you been dizzy? She asked. I'm fine. Lagertha. Her voice was firm. How long? I tried to sit up and immediately regretted it. The world spun, my stomach lurched, and I tasted bile. 2 weeks, I admitted. Maybe 3. Astrid's expression shifted, concern melting into something else, something that looked like dread. When was your last bleeding? The question hit me like cold water. I opened my mouth to answer and realized I couldn't remember. 6 weeks? 7? I'd been so consumed with sneaking to Ragnar's chambers, with stolen hours and whispered conversations, that I'd stopped tracking the moon cycles. My voice sounded distant. I don't know. Astrid helped me to my feet, her grip steady but her face pale. We need to see Sigurd. No. Now. Sigurd the Elder was the pack's master healer, a woman who delivered half the village and buried the other half. She took one look at me and pointed to the examination bench. Lie down. My hands were shaking. I'm just tired. Working too much. Child, Sigurd said, not unkindly. I've been doing this for 40 years. Lie down. She pressed her fingers against my abdomen, checking pulse points and energy flows I'd learned about, but never performed on myself. Her face remained carefully neutral, but I saw her jaw tighten. How long since you were with a male? The room tilted again. That's not... Lagertha. Her eyes met mine. Answer the question. 4 weeks, I whispered. But that's impossible, I'm rejected. Broken Omegas can't bond again, Sigurd finished. That's true, but conception? She pulled back, wiping her hands on her apron. That's a different matter entirely. The words didn't make sense. Couldn't make sense. The stories, I managed. Everyone says rejected Omegas are barren, that once the bond breaks. The stories are wrong. Sigurd's voice was heavy. It's rare, incredibly rare, but possible. The bond breaking doesn't destroy your womb, child. It just makes people stop trying. My hand moved instinctively to my stomach. No. No. You're certain? My voice sounded like it belonged to someone else. Sigurd nodded. About 6 weeks along, maybe 7. The herb room suddenly felt too small, too cold, the walls pressing in like a fist. Does anyone else know? Sigurd asked carefully. Know what? Who the father is. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Because if Sigurd had figured it out, if she'd seen me disappearing into the stronghold night after night. I need to examine the child's bloodline, she continued, pulling out a small knife. Give me your hand. Why? Because if this child is beta-born or omega-born, you might survive what comes next. She met my eyes. But if it's alpha-born... She didn't finish. She didn't have to. Alpha-born children carried markers in the mother's blood. Everyone knew this. It was how they prevented omega women from lying about paternity. It was also how they identified abominations. My hand shook as I extended it. Sigurd pricked my finger, let 3 drops fall onto a piece of treated parchment. We watched in silence as the blood spread, reacting with whatever compound she'd soaked into the paper. It turned gold. Royal gold. Oh, child, Sigurd breathed. The room spun. I was going to be sick. I was going to... You need to run, Astrid said from the doorway. Tonight, before anyone else finds out. She can't run, Sigurd said sharply. She's too far along. The journey would kill her. Staying will kill her faster, Astrid's voice cracked. The council will demand execution. A rejected omega bearing an alpha heir? They'll call it corruption, defilement, they'll burn me, I whispered. The silence confirmed it. Sigurd began mixing something. Valerian root, I recognized numbly, and maybe chamomile. To calm me, to keep me from shattering completely. Does he know? She asked quietly. I shook my head. Ragnar and I hadn't spoken since that night. He'd been called to the Eastern Territories, some new threat, some new battle, and I'd been avoiding. Terrified of what I'd felt in his arms, terrified of wanting something I couldn't have. Now I was carrying proof of that impossible night. You have 3 choices, Sigurd said, pressing the cup into my hands. Run and likely die. Stay silent and hope no one notices until it's too late. Or tell him, I finished. The Alpha King claimed you? No. The word tasted like ash. It was one night, a mistake. Mistake or not, Sigurd said, her weathered hand covering mine. That child is growing, and in 3 months, everyone will know what you've done. I looked down at my still flat stomach, at the secret growing beneath my skin. A child, Ragnar's child, an abomination the council would erase before it drew its first breath. When does he return? I asked hoarsely. Tomorrow, Astrid said. The scouts sent word this morning. 24 hours. I had 24 hours to decide whether to tell the Alpha King he was going to be a father, or to disappear before dawn and take his secret with me. I didn't sleep. All night I sat by my window, watching torches move across the stronghold walls, trying to imagine a future where I survived what came next. Every scenario ended the same way, with fire, or exile, or my body broken on the stones below the judgment platform. By dawn, I'd made my decision. I would tell him. Not because I expected salvation, not because I thought the Alpha King would choose a rejected Omega over his crown, but because Ragnar deserved to know, before I disappeared, that something good had come from that desperate night. Even if that good thing would get us both killed. He returned just after midday, riding through the gates with his warband, covered in mud and exhaustion. I watched from the shadows near the stables, my heart hammering so hard I thought it might crack my ribs. I waited until he dismounted, until the warriors had dispersed. Then I stepped into his path. Lagertha. His face transformed, exhaustion melting into something warm, something that made my throat tight. I was going to find you. I need to speak with you, I said, privately. Something in my tone made his smile falter. What's wrong? Not here. He studied me for a long moment, then nodded. My chambers. 10 minutes. I'd been in his room dozens of times now, but this time felt different. Final. Ragnar closed the door behind us, still in his travel-stained leathers, concern etched across his face. Talk to me. I couldn't look at him. If I looked at him, I'd lose my nerve. That night, I started. 4 weeks ago, when I remember. His voice was rough. I haven't stopped thinking about it. Neither have I. I forced myself to meet his eyes. Ragnar, I'm pregnant. The silence was absolute. He stared at me like I'd spoken in a language he didn't understand. Like the words had to translate themselves through several layers of reality before reaching his brain. He shook his head. That's not possible. You're rejected. The bond breaking doesn't make me barren, just rare. My hands twisted together. Sigurd confirmed it yesterday, 6 weeks along, and the child. I swallowed hard. The blood test turned gold. I watched understanding hit him like a blade. Alpha born, he whispered. Yes. Another beat of silence. Then Ragnar moved, pacing to the window, his hands gripping the frame the same way they had the night everything changed. I could see his mind working, calculating, seeing all the ways this destroyed us. They'll call for your execution, he said finally. I know. The council will say you seduced me, that you corrupted the bloodline. I know. They'll claim the child is illegitimate, tainted. I know, I said, my voice breaking. That's why I'm telling you. So you can decide what to do before you run. I looked away. I won't let them use this against you. I'll disappear. You can say I tricked you, that you didn't know that. Stop. He crossed the room in 3 strides, gripping my shoulders. You think I'd let you face this alone? You're the Alpha King. I'm the father. His voice was steel. Of your child, our child. Tears burned my eyes. They'll destroy you. Let them try. His hands moved to cup my face, forcing me to look at him. You asked me once why I fight. This is why. Because the world that would execute you for loving me is a world that deserves to burn. Ragnar, please. I'm not losing you. His forehead pressed against mine. Not to the council, not to their archaic laws, not to anything. What are you saying? I'm saying I claim you. His thumb brushed away a tear. I claim the child, publicly, today. My heart stopped. That's suicide. That's choice. His eyes held mine, storm gray and unwavering. Isn't that what you told me? That I was allowed to learn who I am without war? Well, I'm learning. And who I am is a man who protects what he loves. The word hung between us like a held breath. You. I couldn't finish. I love you, Lagertha. He said it like a vow, like a battle cry. I've loved you since you apologized to me for causing pain, since you treated me like a man instead of a king, since you stayed when everyone else would have run. I was crying now, unable to stop. This will cost you everything. You are everything. He kissed me then, not desperate like before, but certain. A promise sealed in breath and touch, and the kind of courage that changes worlds. When we broke apart, I saw it in his face. The decision already made. The war already declared. The council meets in an hour, he said. Will you stand with me? Every instinct screamed to refuse, to protect him by disappearing, to save him from having to choose between me and his crown. But I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw a man who'd spent his whole life being told who he had to be, what he had to sacrifice, what he couldn't have. And I realized this wasn't about me saving him. This was about us saving each other. Yes, I whispered. I'll stand with you. Ragnar pulled me close, his hand moving to rest over my stomach where our child grew in secret. Then let's go teach the council what an Alpha King really looks like. The Great Hall had never felt more like a tomb. Stone columns rose toward vaulted ceilings, ancient banners hung from iron chains, and the council sat on their raised platform like judges at the end of the world. 12 elders, faces carved from winter and tradition, watching us enter with the cold satisfaction of predators who'd already tasted blood. Word had spread. Somehow it always did. The hall was packed. Warriors, pack members, everyone who wanted to witness what they thought would be my execution. I felt their eyes on me like brands, heard the whispers slithering through the crowd. Rejected Omega. Corrupted the Alpha King. Abomination. Ragnar's hand found mine as we walked the center aisle. He didn't hide it, didn't hesitate. His fingers laced through mine like a declaration of war. Elder Halvard stood, his ceremonial staff striking the stone floor 3 times. Ragnar Lodbrok, he intoned, Alpha King of the Iron Fjords, you stand accused of violating sacred law. I stand accused of nothing. Ragnar's voice carried through the hall like thunder. I came here to make a claim. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. A claim? Halvard's eyes narrowed. You dare use formal pack rights after what you've done? What I've done, Ragnar said, is choose a mate, as is my right. The hall erupted. She's rejected! Another elder shouted over the chaos. Broken, forbidden from bonding. Forbidden from being chosen, Ragnar corrected, his voice cutting through the noise. Not from choosing. And I choose her. You cannot. I am the Alpha King. Each word landed like a hammer blow. I can do exactly as I please. Halvard's face purpled. This Omega carries your child, a bastard, an abomination born from... My heir, Ragnar interrupted. Born from love, conceived in a moment of honesty this pack hasn't seen in generations. I felt every eye turn to me. Felt their hatred, their disbelief, their certainty that I'd somehow seduced their king away from sense. My hand moved instinctively to my throat, to the moonmark pendant. But Ragnar squeezed my other hand, grounding me. The law is clear, another elder said. Rejected Omegas who conceive must be executed, Ragnar finished coldly. Yes, I know your law, the same law that says Omegas have no voice, no choice, no value beyond what we assign them. He turned, addressing the crowd. The same law that says strength is measured only in dominance, that compassion is weakness, that love is a privilege we grant, not a right we honor. Careful, boy, Halvard warned. You speak of dismantling everything our ancestors built. Our ancestors built a system that turns living beings into property. Ragnar's shout echoed off stone. That punishes women for daring to love, that treats half our population like livestock. I'm not dismantling it. I'm ending it. The hall fell silent. Then Ivar Bloodaxe stood from the warrior section, his scarred face twisted with contempt. You've gone soft, Lodbrok. Let an Omega's skirts turn you against your own kind. My own kind? Ragnar's laugh was sharp. You mean the kind who would kill a pregnant woman for loving the wrong man? That kind? I mean the kind with spine. Ivar snarled. But you've lost yours. Prove me wrong. Fight me, alpha to alpha. Winner decides the Omega's fate. The crowd roared approval. It was the old way, the brutal way, trial by combat to settle what words couldn't. I felt Ragnar tense beside me. This was the trap. Refuse and look weak, accept and risk everything on violence. No, I whispered. Don't. I accept, Ragnar said. The hall exploded with bloodlust. They cleared the center floor, forming a circle. Ancient ritual. Ancient brutality. 2 alphas would enter. Only one would walk away with authority. Ragnar removed his cloak, handing it to Floki, who'd appeared at his side. Don't kill him, Floki murmured, or you'll have 20 more lined up to challenge. I know. Ragnar turned to me, his hand cupping my face. Trust me. I do, I breathed, but I'm terrified. Good. He kissed my forehead. Fear means you care. Then he stepped into the circle. Ivar was bigger, broader, all brutal strength and savage confidence. They circled each other while the crowd chanted, blood-hungry, desperate for violence that would restore their sense of order. Ivar struck first, a crushing blow that should have dropped Ragnar, But Ragnar moved like water, redirecting the force, using Ivar's momentum against him. Not matching strength with strength. Something else. Something I'd seen him learning these past weeks. Strategy, precision, control. They fought for 7 minutes that felt like 7 hours. Ivar landing heavy hits, Ragnar absorbing, adapting, waiting. Then it happened. Ivar overextended, confident in his power. Ragnar swept his legs. She drove him to the ground and had a knife at his throat before the bigger alpha could recover. The hall went silent. "You're beaten," Ragnar said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "By every law, your life is mine." Ivar's eyes widened, fear finally cracking through his arrogance. Ragnar pressed the blade closer, then pulled it away. "But I'm not the kind of alpha who kills to prove a point." He stood, offering his hand. "I'm the kind who shows mercy and demands better." Ivar stared at the offered hand like it was a snake. Then slowly he took it. Ragnar pulled him to his feet, then turned to face the council. "This is my choice," he declared. "Lagertha is my mate, our child is my heir, and any elder who disagrees can challenge me next." No one moved. I thought not. Ragnar walked back to me, taking my hand. "The law changes today. Rejected Omegas can refuse assignments, can choose their own bonds, can live without terror." Elder Halvard's staff trembled. "You're destroying everything." "I'm saving everything that matters." We walked out of that hall together, through a crowd that didn't know whether to cheer or riot. But I heard it. Quiet at first, then growing. Omegas whispering, hoping, finally daring to believe. The stronghold felt different after the Great Hall. Not softer, not safer, but alive in a way it hadn't been before. Like something dormant had finally cracked through frozen ground, fragile and dangerous, and impossibly hopeful. I felt it most in the silence. The way pack members stopped talking when I passed, but didn't sneer. Didn't whisper rejected or moon-touched like curses. They just watched. Uncertain what I was now. What I'd become. Ragnar named me Luna-in-Waiting that evening, in a ceremony so brief the elders barely had time to object. He placed a silver circlet in my hair, nothing ornate, just a simple band that caught firelight, and spoke 3 words that changed everything. "She is mine. Not mine to use, not mine to own, just mine. The way you'd claim the sky, or your heartbeat, or your own name." The threats came within hours, anonymous at first, notes left at the healing rooms, stones through my window, small acts of rebellion from those who refused to let the old ways die, abomination, pretender, you'll bleed before the child is born. Ragnar assigned guards, 2 warriors who followed me everywhere, grim-faced and vigilant. I hated it. Hated feeling like prey that needed protection. But when I tried to argue, Floki cut me off. "You're carrying the air," he said bluntly. "That makes you a target. Get used to it." "I'm also a healer. I need to work." "Then work with guards." His expression softened slightly. "The king would burn this kingdom down if anything happened to you. Don't make me watch him do it." So I worked, with guards hovering, with pack members watching, with the weight of revolution resting on my shoulders like stones. The real change came 3 weeks later. I was in the healing rooms, treating a child's fever, when a young Omega appeared in the doorway. Couldn't have been more than 19. Her face pale, her hands trembling. "Luna," she whispered. The title still felt strange. Can I speak with you?" I dismissed the guards with a look. They hesitated, then stepped outside. The girl, Freya, I learned, collapsed into the chair, tears streaming. "They're trying to bond me to Bjorn the Younger. He's 40, cruel. I've seen how he treats his thralls." Her voice broke. "But my father already accepted the bride price. The ceremony is in 2 days." My chest tightened. Bjorn, the same name as the man who'd rejected me. Different person, same brutality. "What do you want?" I asked quietly. She looked up, confused. "Want? If you could choose. What would you choose?" She blinked. I'd refuse. I'd rather live alone than with a man who terrifies me. I reached across, taking her shaking hands. Then refuse. But my father. The new decree says you can reject assignments. It's your right now. The elders won't honor it. They're still fighting. Let them fight. I squeezed her hands. Stand in that ceremony and say no. I'll stand with you. Her eyes widened. You'd do that? Someone stood for me, I said, thinking of Ragnar in the Great Hall. Now I stand for you. 2 days later, I kept my promise. The bonding ceremony was held in the village square. The whole pack gathered to witness tradition. Bjorn the Younger stood at the altar, smug and certain. Freya's father presented her like livestock, and when the elder asked, "Do you accept this bond?" Freya's voice rang out clear. "No." The square erupted. Bjorn lunged forward. "You dare!" I stepped between them, my guards materializing at my sides. "She refuses," I said calmly, "as is her right under the Alpha King's decree." "That decree is not law!" the officiating elder sputtered. "It is law," came Ragnar's voice from the crowd. He moved through the gathered wolves like a blade, coming to stand beside me. "Signed and sealed, any who violate it answer to me." Freya's father tried to object. Bjorn threatened violence. The elders protested tradition and order and the way things had always been. Ragnar listened to it all, then spoke one sentence. She said no. The simplicity of it cut through every argument. Freya left that square unbonded, shaking but free. And behind her I heard it starting, whispers among the other Omegas, questions, hope spreading like fire in dry grass. That night, I found Ragnar on the stronghold balcony, staring out at the moonlit fjords. I wrapped my arms around him from behind, feeling the tension in his shoulders. You're carrying the weight of the world," I murmured, just trying to make it lighter. He turned, his hand moving to rest over my stomach. The curve was visible now, even through my dress. "How's our revolutionary?" "Growing." I covered his hand with mine. "Are you afraid?" "Terrified," he admitted. "Every day the council schemes. Every night I wonder if I've pushed too far, too fast." His eyes met mine. "But then I think about you. About this child. About Freya and all the others who might finally have choice." He pulled me closer. "And I know it's worth it. Even if they never forgive you? Even then." He kissed my forehead. "Some things are worth breaking the world for." From somewhere in the village below, I heard singing. An old Omega lullaby my mother used to hum. But louder now. Bolder. Like the moon finally remembering it had teeth. Floki appeared in the doorway, his expression unreadable. 3 more Omegas just filed refusal papers. The elders are losing their minds. Ragnar grinned. "Good. You're enjoying this." "Immensely." I leaned against Ragnar's chest, feeling our child move for the first time, a flutter like butterfly wings. "Did you feel that?" His hand pressed closer. I felt it. We stood there, 3 heartbeats united, while below us the world we were remaking hummed with dangerous new life. Winter settled over the iron fjords like a held breath. Snow covered the stronghold in silence, muffling the arguments that still raged in council chambers, softening the edges of a world being remade one painful inch at a time. 3 months had passed since the Great Hall confrontation. 3 months of small victories and smaller rebellions, of laws rewritten and traditions challenged. 3 months of my belly growing round with proof that the impossible had happened. I stood at the window of our chambers now, not just his, watching fat snowflakes drift past torchlight. Behind me I heard Ragnar enter, his footsteps familiar as my own heartbeat. "You're supposed to be resting," he said, wrapping his arms around me from behind, his hands settling protectively over my swollen stomach. "I've been resting for 3 hours. I'll go mad if I rest any longer." His laugh rumbled through me. Stubborn woman. Bossy alpha. It had become our ritual. These small exchanges that said, I see you, I know you, I choose you without needing the words. Our child kicked, strong enough that Ragnar felt it through my dress. His breath caught. Still not used to that, he murmured. Neither am I. I turned in his arms, studying his face. The scar above his eyebrow looked softer in the firelight. Less like a warrior, more like a man who'd finally learned to rest. Are you afraid? Of what? Fatherhood, the birth, all of it. He was quiet for a moment, his hand moving in slow circles over where our child grew. Terrified, he admitted. I've faced armies, Lagertha, fought wars, killed men with my bare hands, but the thought of you in pain, of something going wrong, of holding something so small and fragile? His voice roughened. Yes, I'm afraid. But it's a good fear. He tilted my chin up, his storm-gray eyes holding mine. The kind that means something matters, that someone matters more than crowns or conquest, or any of the things I thought defined me. I touched his face, tracing the line of his jaw. Who are you now? Without war? He smiled, the real smile, the one he saved for these quiet moments between us. I'm learning, every day. A knock at the door interrupted us. Floki's voice, gruff but respectful. The delegation from the Eastern Pax is here. They want to discuss your Omega reforms. Ragnar sighed. Tell them I'll be down in 10 minutes. They specifically asked for the Luna. I felt Ragnar tense. No, I'll come, I said. Lagertha. I'm carrying your heir, not dying of plague. I squeezed his hand. Besides, they need to see me, see that I'm real, not some seductress from their nightmares. You don't have to prove anything. I'm not proving anything. I moved toward the wardrobe, pulling out the deep blue dress that had been made for formal occasions. I'm showing them what the future looks like. In the Eastern delegation was exactly what I expected. 5 alphas, stone-faced and skeptical, seated around the council table like judges. They stood when we entered, for Ragnar, not for me. But I saw their eyes track to my stomach, calculating, assessing. Alpha King, the lead delegate said. We've heard troubling reports. Omegas refusing bonds, pack structure destabilizing, chaos disguised as progress. Strange, Ragnar said, settling into his chair and pulling me down beside him. I call it choice. Choice creates disorder. Order built on suffering isn't order. I interrupted quietly. It's oppression. 5 pairs of eyes turned to me, surprised I'd spoken. The Luna has opinions, one muttered. The Luna has a voice, Ragnar corrected coldly, which she's free to use, just as every Omega in my territory is free to refuse bonds that would destroy them. And if other packs follow your example, another demanded, if this revolution spreads, then the world becomes better, I said, one choice at a time. They argued for an hour, citing tradition, stability, the natural order. Ragnar dismantled every argument with the precision of a man who'd spent months preparing for exactly this fight. But it was Floki who ended it. You want to know why the northern fjords are stronger now? He said, leaning against the wall. Because our Omegas don't spend every moment terrified. Because our females aren't treated like breeding stock. Because the Alpha King had the balls to admit the old ways were broken. He grinned. But please, keep clinging to your traditions. We'll happily accept the refugees when your packs implode. The delegates left soon after, dissatisfied but thoughtful. When they were gone, Ragnar pulled me close. You didn't have to face them. Yes, I did. I rested my head against his shoulder. We're in this together, remember? That night, as snow continued to fall, we lay in bed with his hand resting over my belly, feeling our child move beneath his palm. I hummed without thinking, the old lullaby, my mother's melody. And then I heard it. Ragnar, humming with me. I looked up, startled. When did you learn that? I've been listening, he said softly. To you, for months now. his fingers laced through mine. You do it when you're content. When you feel safe. I wanted... He trailed off, almost shy. I wanted to be able to do that for our child, to carry something of you in the music. Tears burned my eyes. You're going to be a wonderful father. I'm going to try. We lay there in comfortable silence. Two people who'd been broken by the world they were born into, now remaking it into something gentler. Something better. Ragnar? Do you regret it? Any of it? He was quiet for a long moment. Then, I regret every moment I spent before I knew you. Every day I thought strength meant being alone. Every night I believed love was weakness. He turned to face me fully. But this? Us. Our child. The world we're building? His hand cupped my face. Not for a single heartbeat. I kissed him then, soft and certain, tasting snow and firelight and the future we'd chosen against impossible odds. We weren't chosen by fate, I whispered against his lips. No, he agreed, pulling me closer. We chose each other. And in that choice, in that brave and terrifying and utterly impossible love, we'd begun to change everything. Outside, the moon rose full and bright over the iron fjords, watching, approving, finally growing teeth. The end. If you enjoyed the story, let me know in the comments. Your voice decides what I write next. Don't forget to subscribe if you want more moonlit love stories like this one.